how Lanzatech is at least the role it hopes to play in this space. Okay. If you look at the global energy scenario, we know that with low energy prices, record low, historically record low crude oil and natural gas prices in many regions of the world, there's a larger available pool of energy, but even despite that, there's about 1 billion people that still lack access to affordable energy, basic energy. Okay, and if you reflect on where energy demand is growing, it's pretty flat across most of the Western Hemisphere, and the growth is predominantly in Asia Pacific, with China obviously driving a lot of that growth going the next couple of decades. But what the IEA and the EIA, the International Energy Agencies, they project is by 2020s, India would actually overtake China as the primary driver of energy demand growth globally. So if you go in the context of the current scenario of where energy comes from, it's really fossil-based. And but to put this in context, fossil obviously is the source of carbon, which has energy. But carbon is present literally everywhere in our everyday life. In heavy industry, obviously, carbon is used as a reagent in the process of making steel and or ferroalloys. It's the source of making high density, high energy content transport fuels. Carbon is the only source really to make petrochemicals and chemicals. And carbon also is part of the chemistry in nutrition. So carbon per se is very pervasive, and you can't avoid the use of carbon. The problem comes when you combust carbon, and that has been the principal issue that's caused the various climatic effects that we have seen, and was nicely depicted in the video that we were viewing just a little earlier. In conjunction with the massive release of, through combustion of carbon, massive release of greenhouse gases, CO2 primarily, but also CH4, which is even more potent as a greenhouse gas, but also more adversely is the very high levels of particulate emissions that have been the cause of a lot of severe smogs in major cities around the world, and also burning carbon, combusting carbon, you release NOx and SOx and mercury in many cases, and the acid rain that accompanies has a deleterious, adverse, detrimental impact on a lot of things on the ground. So, in that context, here's a picture of New Delhi and Beijing very recently, and surprisingly, Delhi was rated the most polluted city in some recent surveys of any city. I mean, Beijing gets all the bad rap, but Delhi has been pretty bad, and more so in the last several years. I lived in Delhi for 6 years, from 1999 to 2005, and I thought that the Delhi environment actually improved in the time that I was there, because prior to that, there was a heavy use of very low quality diesel by all the commercial fleets plying in and around Delhi. But then the Supreme Court passed a law that dictated the oil companies to use more environmentally friendly fuels, and overnight CNG was mandated in the NCR capital region as a transport fuel for all commercial fleet buses, auto rickshaws, taxis, and the like. But the fact is, if we continue burning carbon at the rate that to meet future energy demand, you see the global temperature rise that's going to go well beyond the 2 degrees C that the IPCC has indicated is necessary to keep things in check. And we're going to see more severe droughts and and floods, and the intensity of these droughts and floods and the frequency of it has obviously been a lot more in the last several years across the world, right? And that has also has had a negative impact on just social turmoil that has led to instability in different parts of the world. And so unless we do something on how we use energy and source energy, we're going to have to face a future that is going to be even more replete with these pollution and severe weather events that we saw in the last video. Okay. Over and above that, we know a recent study that's done that suggests that just the impact of the high ozone induced crop damage is sufficient to have fed about 94 million people in India. Another study suggested that even a 1 degree increase in global temperatures would cut the global wheat production by about 42 million tons. So what this suggests over and above the environmental issues, the negative consequences on global food production, so the vision for carbon really needs to change. And it's not been an easy hurdle to overcome. The position of China and India thus far has always been that, you guys polluted the world, polluted the atmosphere, and we are trying to grow and our economies to meet the demands of our rising populations and create employment. But it all comes at a price. There's a lot of people now who don't take expat assignments in Beijing, for instance, because the atmosphere is there so poisonous or toxic for a few months. And Delhi is going to go through the same phase actually if nothing is done. But I think with the new government, there's going to be a lot more attention potentially paid to this. Arun Jaitley was in Washington just last week, and he gave a talk at the Center for Strategic International Studies, and it was, if you go to the websites, you can catch that. And he actually mentioned renewable energy as something that India has no choice but to adopt. So even in the upcoming Paris talks, I think both China and India are going to probably have a more proactive position to address some of these issues. So really the solution that I wanted to share with you was one way to minimize carbon is really recycling the carbon. The carbon emissions are universal, they're abundant in the way you use energy. So if there's a way you can recycle carbon and convert it to something that's of higher value, then there's one avenue to address this issue. And that really is a technology that Lanzatech is developing and hoping to commercialize. Okay. So the approach that is being taken is really using industrial waste emissions. Multiple industries in the world. The steel industry is a global industry. There's about 1.5 billion tons of steel that's manufactured globally, with a good chunk of that in China. But India also has a growing steel sector. The emissions from those, aside from the power and cement sector, the steel industry is one of the major emitters of greenhouse gases. So they're under a lot more scrutiny in terms of getting their emissions under control. In Beijing, for instance, Hebei province, which is north of Beijing, has about, China has about 50% of the global steel capacity, and about 50% of the Chinese steel capacity is in Hebei province. And the Chinese government, the Beijing municipality or Beijing government issued a diktat a year and a half ago saying no more steel expansions in Hebei because it's in the direct line of sight of Beijing, which was getting a lot of negative publicity from this pollution issues in several months of the year. And the steel sector was certainly one of the major contributors. So one of the avenues to, if you can take those waste gases that's now being emitted, flared, and instead convert it, it provides a means to not only lower the carbon footprint, but also add some value. As we all know that residues are already being, sorry, this is some automatic sequence, but anyway, the agricultural and forestry residues, we know corn store and the like, etc., are already being, the fermentable sugars are being extracted.